If I have seen further than others, it is by standing upon the shoulders of giants. That's Isaac Newton.
Yeah.
And it feels like a really fitting way to start this deep dive.
It really does, especially for this topic.
Yeah, because today we're trying to unpack the incredibly complex world of modern missiles. We're not really looking at the headlines or the politics today.
Right, more the nuts and bolts, the science behind it all.
Exactly. The physics, the engineering.
Yeah.
It's actually fascinating stuff. And, understanding this is pretty crucial for making sense of the world today. Good general knowledge, obviously.
And really useful context if you're following current events or maybe even studying for exams like the UPSC.
Definitely. Our source for this is some excellent material from The Science of Modern Missiles in the Indian Express. So let's set the scene a bit. Think back to London, 1944, summer.
Ah, the V1.
Yeah, people heard this sound like a weird motorbike way up high, then silence, and then boom, the buzz bomb.
And that really was the start of it all, this modern missile age. It was noisy, pretty inaccurate by today's standards, but it was guided, long-range, autonomous, a huge leap.
And the journey from that buzzing thing to, well, what we have now, nearly invisible hypersonic gliders that can dodge and weave. It's just staggering.
It really is. But underneath all that advancement, it comes back to the fundamentals, doesn't it? Speed, trajectory, how you control something moving incredibly fast.
And predicting where things will be.
That's a huge part of it. Physics, basically.
Okay, so let's break it down. The word missile, it comes from Latin, right? Missilis.
Yeah, that which may be thrown. Simple projectiles originally. Arrows, stones from a sling. That's where it starts.
And the science of how those things fly, just under gravity and air resistance, that's ballistics.
Right, the foundation. How unpowered things move through the air.
So modern ballistic missiles, they're like super evolved versions of throwing a rock. They only get power at the start.
Exactly. They boost up, often way out of the atmosphere, cut the engine, and then just coast. They follow a predictable arc, a parabolic path, dictated by gravity and their initial speed and direction.
Like an ICBM intercontinental ballistic missile.
Yeah.
You mentioned they go, over 1,000 kilometers up and hit Mach 20.
Yeah, incredible speeds and altitudes. Makes them very, very hard to stop once they're on their way down.
Predictable. That's the key word, isn't it? If it follows a set path based on physics,
then you can calculate that path. And if you can calculate it, you can theoretically intercept it. That predictability is both a strength and, well, a vulnerability.
Which leads us to guidance.
Yeah.
You can't just point and shoot if your target is moving.
No way. Think about hitting an airplane or a ship or even a tank on the move. It's not going to be where you aimed by the time the missile gets there. You need something smarter.
So guided missiles have sensors, like eyes and ears.
Sort of, yeah. Radar to see radio waves bouncing off the target, infrared sensors to detect heat, sometimes GPS for location, and they need ways to steer.
How do they steer? Little wings.
Yeah, things like small fins, like on an airplane, to adjust their path in the atmosphere. Sometimes tiny rocket thrusters for corrections in space. Plus gyroscopes to know which way they're pointing. It's a whole system.
Okay, so the missile sees the target, knows where it is, and adjusts its own path. But the target's moving? That sounds incredibly difficult.
It is. It's a constant calculation. Engineers call it solving a pursuit curve. The missile isn't aiming where the target is now, but where it predicts the target will be fractions of a second later.
Like trying to catch something. You run to where it's going, not where it was.
Exactly that principle. But happening at thousands of kilometers per hour, calculating hundreds of times a second. You mentioned Barnes-Wallis earlier.
Oh yeah, the bouncing ball guy.
Right. He apparently used things like bicycle chains and gears back in the day to physically model trajectories. Amazing ingenuity.
Wow. Chains and gears versus today's microprocessors and AI doing predictive algorithms.
The tools are vastly different, but the core challenge is the same. Predict future motion based on current data in real time under pressure.
Okay, let's talk about the rocket part. Every missile is basically a rocket, right?
Fundamentally, yes. Propulsion relies on Newton's third law. Throw mass backward, hot gas in this case, and you get pushed forward. Simple principle, complex engineering.
But moving that fast, especially in the air, that causes problems, doesn't it?
Oh, huge problems. Once you go supersonic, faster than Mach 1, the air doesn't just flow smoothly anymore. It creates shock waves. And the friction...
Friction, like rubbing your hands together, but faster.
Way, way faster.
Yeah.
At speeds like Mach 5 or higher, the friction with air molecules generates incredible heat, thousands of degrees Celsius on the surface.
Thousands. How does anything survive that?
Special materials, ceramics, advanced composites, sometimes materials called ablatives that are designed to slowly burn or vaporize away, carrying the heat with them. It's extreme materials science.
Yeah, it's not just heat, right? You mentioned G-forces.
Ah, yes, G-forces. Think about the acceleration when it launches or when it makes a sharp turn to follow a target. The inertia is immense.
Like being pushed back in your seat in a fast car, but much worse.
Hundreds of times worse, potentially. Enough to crush ordinary electronics or structures. So everything inside the sensors, the computers, has to be incredibly ruggedized, built to withstand those forces.
It gives you real respect for the engineering. And all this gets even more extreme when we talk about hypersonics. Mach 5 plus.
This is really the cutting edge right now. Hypersonic glide vehicles, for instance, they get boosted up by a rocket and then detach and sort of surf along the upper edges of the atmosphere.
Surf, so they don't just follow a ballistic arc.
No, that's the key difference. They can maneuver, they can change direction unpredictably while traveling at over, say, 6,000 kilometers per hour.
For that combination, extreme speed plus maneuverability, that's what makes them so disruptive.
Exactly. Current missile defense systems are mostly designed to intercept things on predictable ballistic paths. Tracking and hitting something moving that fast and changing direction is a whole different, much harder problem. Maybe impossible with today's tech.
You see major powers investing heavily. China, the U.S., India's DRDO is testing them too.
The strategic implications are massive. Think about warning times. An ICBM might take 30-40 minutes from launch to impact. A hypersonic weapon could cover the same distance in maybe under 10 minutes.
That drastically changes defense calculations, deterrence response, everything.
It really does. And there's another challenge, tracking them. At those speeds, the intense heat can create a bubble of plasma superheated ionized gas around the vehicle.
Plasma, like in a neon sign, but around them is...
Sort of, yeah. And that plasma can absorb or bend radar signals, making it really hard for ground-based radar to get a solid track. It's called the plasma sheath effect.
So there's a race not just to build these things, but also to figure out how to defend against them.
Absolutely. People are looking at new sensor networks, maybe based in space, or even things like directed energy weapons, high-powered lasers, or microwaves as potential counters. It's a constant back and forth.
Going back to guidance, that Project Pigeon story is wild.
Right.
B.F. Skinner, the psychologist.
Yeah, it sounds crazy now, but during World War II, he genuinely proposed using trained pigeons in the nose cone of missiles.
How would that even work?
They'd be trained to peck at an image of the target projected onto a screen. The pecking location would physically move the missile's control fins.
Pigeons guiding missiles. It shows how desperate they were for any kind of guidance system, I guess.
It does, and it highlights the basic need. Sense the target, computer correction, actuate the controls, pigeon eye, pigeon brain, pigeon beak driving the fins.
Replaced today by silicon chips, complex algorithms, infrared sensors, radar.
Exactly. But the fundamental task is the same. Hit something far away that's moving and maybe trying not to be hit. It's physics, engineering, and now increasingly AI working together.
And the missiles have to be smarter now too, right? To deal with countermeasures.
For sure. Modern targets use evasive maneuvers. They might deploy decoys or use electronic jamming to confuse the missile sensors.
So the missile software has to anticipate maneuvers, filter out the fake signals, stay locked on the real target, all in milliseconds.
Right. Think of an air-to-air missile dogfighting. It's making constant, tiny adjustments hundreds per second under immense physical stress. It's like a nice-speed robotic problem solver.
It's really that blend, isn't it? Newton's laws governing the flight path, but neural networks perhaps helping guide it. Calculus defining the trajectory, but advanced code making real-time decisions.
It is. The basic science hasn't changed since someone first threw a rock, but now that rock flies at Mach 10, carries its own brain, and, well, it rarely misses.
It's an incredible illustration of how fundamental science scales up. Understanding this really helps contextualize so much what we see in global affairs and technology.
It really does, and it leaves us with a pretty profound thought, doesn't it? What does it mean for security, for stability, when reaction times shrink to just a few minutes and weapons are capable of making complex decisions almost autonomously?
That's definitely something to think about. This deep dive into the science of modern missiles drew on insights from the Indian Express. If you found this useful, especially if you're tracking current events or maybe prepping for exams like the UPSC.
Then please do like this deep dive and subscribe to the series. We cover a lot of relevant topics.
And let us know what you think in the comments. What part of this science surprised you the most? Or do you have other questions? We'd love to hear from you.